Good morning, and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We're delighted to have you here, both in this space and those attending virtually. It's good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Dana Boyle, she, her, and I'm a member of our board of directors. Whoever and wherever you are, you're warmly invited to join us for social hour at noon, either in person or on Zoom. The Zoom link will be in the chat box. And for those in person, the social hour this week will begin in our social hall and then break into groups, and you'll have the option to join a group when you enter the social hall. Besides myself, service participants today include Nico Van Ostrand, Reverend Roger, Reverend Sarah, with behind-the-scenes support from Reverend Jack, Anna Garris, and Aaron Scott. Music today is from the OK Factor and from Laura Stone Garage. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Good morning. It is a joy and an honor to welcome Reverend Leslie Takahashi to our service today. Reverend Leslie is the lead minister of Mount Diablo Unitarian Church in Walnut Creek, California. She served as the chair of the UUA's Landmark Commission on Institutional Change and was a primary writer of Widening the Circle of Concern. Widening the Circle of Concern outlines the Commission's plans for addressing the challenges of inclusion and hospitality and anti-racism in our congregations and our UU Association. White Bear UU's Facing Race team and I are planning to lead an exploration of widening the circle this year. Another incredible gift of Reverend Leslie's ministry was her Berry Street lecture a few years ago. The Berry Street Lecture Series is the oldest continuous lecture series in the United States. Reverend Leslie and her visionary ministry are such blessings to her church and to our wider UU Association. And so I am really grateful that she accepted my invitation to share a message with us today. And I wanted you to hear her voice early in this new church year.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together, we make it a holy place. And just a reminder, we do require masks be worn in the building unless you're speaking at this pulpit. Thank you. Nico Van Ostrand will lead our chalice lighting.
Sometimes after a long day of work and class and homework, I experience what I call squeezy brain. It's when my brain is so full of stuff, new information, interesting ideas, big feelings, and it feels a little like a squeezed out sponge. I've learned that when I have squeezy brain, the only solution is to do the hard work of getting everything sorted out and settled before adding anything else into my mind. And eventually, the new information and ideas and feelings help open up my mind a little more. So maybe I've misnamed this sensation. Maybe it's not squeezy brain, but stretchy brain, the feeling of my mind expanding. So this month, the theme is covenants. And I was thinking that covenants, or perhaps the people in covenant with one another, experience stretchy brain too. I think they regularly get filled up with new and different things and have to do that hard work of sorting through it all and stretching. So I light the chalice this morning in honor of that hard work of stretchy brains and stretchy covenants.
So join me in our opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Join us in our opening hymn, humming if you're here in the building with us, singing if you're in a safe place to do so at home or otherwise. We'll only do 2 verses of the hymn, but as you can see, we have multiple verses available. There are 6 verses total in our hymnal. So please choose 2 that feel the most resonant to you, your favorite there. And rise in body or spirit as we do our hymn.
Hi, I'm Indigo Lewis, and I serve Mount Diablo Unitarian Universalist Church as the Director for Lifespan Religious Education.
And I'm Leslie Takahashi, and I get to work with Indigo. We have a couple small friends who'd like to tell you a story.
Hi, I'm Ace, and I'm an alligator, just in case you couldn't tell. Well, unlike some of my larger relatives, you might have missed me because I'm a little smaller than most. But the church is my church too. In fact, I've got some friends who usually join me, and they're walking up right now. Rocky, Babbitt, I'm over here.
Oh, hi, Ace. I'm so excited we made it to church this morning, especially because the service is all about us. Rocky, I'm pretty sure that is not the case. Yes, it said so. In our email, it said Sunday service would talk about how we could make small changes. And since we're the smallest things around, it must be about us. No, Rocky, it's about the beauty of a small life, not small animals, even though we are pretty special. I don't understand.
Rocky, I think it's like this. The small choices we make in life are important too. For instance, I'm really worried about all the plastic that drifts out to the ocean. So I wash all the plastic bags from the grocery store and keep using them to store food in the refrigerator. And when they get empty, I wash them again.
Oh, I could practice small choices as well. I hate that my favorite drinks like iced tea and milk come in plastic bottles. I could try to find drinks that come in cans and cartons. Oh, I think I get this. I want to make a small choice too. I could
Ride your bike.
pick up litter.
Turn down the AC.
Wait, those are all good suggestions, but my small choice is
Bing. Two, sounds like it's time for worship and we don't want to be late.
yeah, last time we got stuck in the back and couldn't see a thing over all the big people. Rocky, can you tell us afterwards? I guess so. I mean, no. Hey, a small thing you could do is listen to me.
Oh, that is true. What is your idea?
I could find a smaller log to live in and give up some of the things I have, well, borrowed over the years. And then I would have less stuff.
Closer, buddy. You're getting closer.
I'm here. I'm back. I'm centered. As we move into a meditative time, I want to note that we have gathered the slips from the prayer request bowl, and we will include the names and prayer requests that are added into the chat box here in Zoom. And we want to make sure that our, 40 households on Zoom and all of the 25-ish to 30 people in this room can share our joys and concerns together. Okay. Now, join me in a time of meditation and prayer. Find a comfortable place for your body. Let your eyes relax and bring your mind into this moment. Find your center. The center that brings you calm and reminds you that there is kindness in the world. Your center that reminds you you have the capacity to hear hard truths, to learn new things, to grow and to change. Find that center and balance there for a time, resting in ease and love. As we hold our center, let us hold each other in love. We hold those of us who are celebrating wonder in our lives, anniversaries, births, new jobs, so many things to be joyful about. We also hold those of us who are struggling with the stresses of living in a pandemic, struggling with grief, with depression, with mental health concerns, with addiction. We also hold all of those who are caring for people who are struggling, which in truth is all of us. So we hold these members and friends in our congregation. As I lose the slips I had, here they are. We hold these members and friends. We're praying in loving support for Charlotte, Mark, and Max. We are holding gratitude for Noel being cancer-free and praying for Chris' continued recovery from a heart attack and a stroke. We hold prayers for healing for Lori, Peter, and Susie. And we hold Risa and Karsten Nochi, who welcomed their daughter, Elisa. Grandmother Charlotte Nochi is bursting with joy at her birth recently. As we hold all of those, I want to hold the names that are in your heart. So let's take a moment to breathe in the silence and then share out the names that are on your heart into this moment together. We hold all of them and all of you in love.
Today's special collection is for Solid Ground, a longtime partner of WBUUC. Solid Ground, a local nonprofit based in White Bear Lake, serves more than 500 children and adults per year in suburban Ramsey and Washington counties. Most participants housed by Solid Ground have experienced long-term homelessness and other trauma, as well as struggles with mental illness, chemical dependency, and/or chronic health conditions. Solid Ground also supports clients in pursuing health, education, and employment goals, and they provide enrichment activities for children to promote social, emotional, and academic growth. Your donation is especially important as many continue to struggle with the economic, health, and personal effects of COVID-19. You can contribute to the offering today by texting the following prompts on screen or in the chat box. You can also contribute online through WBUUC's website, or you can send a check or leave one in the collection plate outside the sanctuary doors. On checks, please be sure to indicate Solid Ground. Thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life that we live together.
Our reading this morning is from the Reverend Rebecca Parker, In the Midst of a World. In the midst of a world marked by tragedy and beauty, there must be those who bear witness against unnecessary destruction and who, with faith, rise and lead in freedom, with grace and power. There must be those who speak honestly and do not avoid seeing what must be seen, of sorrow, of outrage, or tenderness and wonder. There must be those whose grief troubles the water while their voices sing and speak refreshed worlds. There must be those whose exuberance rises with lovely energy that articulates earth's joys. There must be those who are restless for and respectful and loving companionship among human beings. There must be those whose presence invites people to be themselves without fear. There must be those who gather with the congregation of remembrance and compassion, draw water from old wells, and walk the simple path of love for neighbor. And there must be communities of people who seek to do justice and love kindness and walk humbly with God, who call on the strength of soul force to heal, transform, and bless life. There must be religious witness.
Good morning. My name is Leslie Takahashi, and I use she and her pronouns, and I'm so grateful to be able to be a guest in your pulpit today. Thank you, Roger, for the invitations to be here. What are the things that you will not forget from these last few years? For me, it will be the pulsing silence of days with no planes, trains, and few automobiles, and what it was like to fly down an interstate highway, which is usually a parking lot, as the only car there in the middle of the day, going to bring some food to our sanctuary guest, who was the only person still on our campus for many months. I won't forget my weekly experiments with my sourdough starter and my eggs with the oregano variant I just happened to plant right before all the world shut down. I also will always hold in my heart the picture of scores of police flanking the streets for a local Black Lives Matter protest organized by high school students. And now, here we are in this odd 2021, this time in which things are reopened, and yet every day we hear someone bemoaning that the world hasn't gone back to normal yet. It's my belief that the world won't reset in that way, and that if we keep just putting all of our energy into wanting that, it will deny what we can't, it is to deny what we can't unknow, and to deny the possibilities we have to live fully in this world as it is for us today. In California, we now understand that there are 5 seasons because we always now will have fire season. We can't unknow the sight of fire-blackened mountains and hills which come just before the greening now in this climate-changing world. We can't unsee the urban cardboard and tent villages that sprawl across our highways, in our parking lots, everywhere because of the moderate temperatures in our area and the number of people who have no permanent place to live. We can't unknow the ways that we organized after hearing George Floyd's rasping voice saying, "They'll kill me," or Eric Gardner saying, "I can't breathe." We can't even count all the empty storefronts. Some of the merchants wrote thank you notes and signs to customers that were never seen because people weren't out in the streets in those months. We can't ungrieve the number of new plaques that are just outside where I'm speaking to you from in our memorial garden. And a few weeks ago, we released into the ground of our memorial redwood grove the beads that we had ritualized to collect, each bead symbolizing 100 lives lost to COVID. But we stopped at 500,000. We were just not able to hold all that we knew at that time. We released them into the ground just a few weeks ago. We can't unview those images from our nation's capital at the beginning of this 2021, ordinary people contorted by anger, doing things that perhaps they didn't even know why they were compelled to do. We can't unknow that so many in this United States Senate continue to choose party politics over the now known possibility of a threat to our democracy. We can't unknow what it was like to wake, to listen to the morning news week after week, month after month, year after year, saying, "I don't want to know this." We can't unknow it. We just can't. You know, I think we are all at some level grieving what has been, and bargaining is a part of grief. Bargaining is where I want to go always, the morning after someone I love deeply has died. That place where I want to say, no, this isn't true. I don't want to know this. I don't want this world. I want to live in the world I used to have. I remember that feeling when we first moved on to Zoom in February of 2020. I had this feeling of great grief and wanting to push something away because my association with Zoom was as the chair of the Commission on Institutional Change, appointed by our Unitarian Universalist Association Board of Trustees, and I had used Zoom hour after hour after hour to hear the stories of Black, Indigenous, and people of color talking about how they wished to be a part of this faith, but how they were not given the space to do so. They could not find a home among us. What we can't unknow is that we live in a world forever transformed, and also we can't unknow that we have the power of transformation if we don't choose to live in a limbo of powerlessness and denial. The Buddhist teaching that the pain of life is not optional, but suffering is one that has come back to me again and again in these last years. Suffering comes, the teachers say, from resisting what is. Holding our grief is a way of holding what is, feeling that pain, but feeling it in a way that it isn't compounded by suffering. One of the most important skills in this new world is the ability to hold two things in isometric tension with one another. And in some ways, in these times, the grief makes the joy stand out more firmly. This is a lot to hold. And yet, because we cannot unknow it, we must speak of these things with one another. We must hold them together. We must grieve together. We have a lot of things to hold together. We also can't unknow how much better we understand our interdependence with the rest of the natural world, or those days when it was so quiet in those months when no one was traveling. We can't forget how blue the sky was without the pollution of commuting and the quiet of the nights. We can't unknow the ways we got to know ourselves when we didn't have quite as much to fill our days, and how ordinary people did their everyday jobs as health providers and store clerks and drivers, and they made it possible for the rest of us to be here today as sentient beings. We can't unknow how heroic our youth and young adults would be, how they would hear the call of brown and black voices and lead many of us into the streets to affirm that Black lives matter, or how brave our fellow Unitarian Universalists would be, those who are also Black and Indigenous and people of color, and that they would share their stories so that we would act upon them, so that we wouldn't push them away and try to unknow them. We can't unknow how those we hailed as essential workers realized the extent of how they were being exploited and now refuse to go back to many of those jobs, or how by closing the borders we eliminated a necessary part of our workforce and are now paying the price. We can't unfear how easily the hard-won rights of women, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and queer people can be turned back, or how those who momentarily claimed that Black lives matter are now saying ho-hum. We can't unknow how those of us with the resources to come together to learn and to laugh and to be on each other's actual lifelines could do so on screens and learn new skills along the way. We can't unknow how when somebody needed something, whether it was a virtual hug or some help with advocacy, we tried to be there with each other. We can't unknow any of this or turn back the clock to live in some world that no longer exists. Pain is requisite, suffering is not. We cannot unknow that we live in this world now, which is neither new nor normal, and yet when we act as opposed to just simply putting all of our energy into resisting, we have many resources. The kind of divinity that we believe in actually is the kind that isn't all-knowing. It's the kind that requires each of us to bring our little grain of truth to the greater whole in the service of something that we want to know together. It's the kind that says that creative good can be released into this world when we each do our part to release it. At this time, we can't unknow our renewed appreciation of science, which gives us life-saving vaccines. We can't unknow that people work tirelessly in coalitions to counter the effects of gerrymandering, voter intimidation, and suppression. We can't uncelebrate the young adult activists who ask for change now rather than, as Greta Thunberg said at the end of September, no more blah, 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 talk and no action. We can't unknow that when, despite the misinformation, false news, and gerrymandering, the still unfulfilled promise of this democracy is still being fought by many. We can't unknow that the world that we will recreate in these months ahead can reemerge with a higher degree of safety for more of its citizens, and that we too can recreate this in the ways that we gather in our faith communities as well. So let us also in this moment remember that we have learned, that we have loved, and that we have laughed together, that holding paradox is a joy in the possibility and the sorrow at the canyons of division among us as neighbors, as families, and as fellow religionists as well. We can celebrate our desire to go back to joyful activities next to the recognition that we still have a lot of important work to do to build the world we dream of. We can still celebrate this within our living tradition because we know a lot. We know how to offer deep hospitality in this post-traumatic pause after a time of plagues of hate and restrictions of rights. We know about the fissures and the cracks that endanger our foundations, our neighborhoods, our societies. We know the places that we can rebuild on the rock-solid foundation of a widening circle of concern. You know, the Commission on Institutional Change did a lot of work, and it wasn't just about how to do a little racial justice work on the side. We listened to the voices of people who do know about how to weave in principles of diversity, equity, inclusion into the very fabric of what we do together as Unitarian Universalists, into governance, into lifespan religious education, into justice, into worship, into spiritual practice, and into our very important work as employers. So let us remember that even though all of us are entering this fall with a sort of spiritual weariness that we're just starting to unpack among the grieving and the confusion and the other things that are there, that we can rebuild forward because we have the capacity to reconstruct, and because we know more clearly than ever that we are better together. We do know, when we're not fighting to unknow, that we aren't headed back to the life we had before. We can't be, because that would be a form of denial. It would deny the lives that have been lost and the lives that have been damaged by the ways that we were ignorant, and we don't want to live in that kind of suffering. If we can do this together in community, we can drill down into some new and emerging data, such as a study coming out of Massachusetts that says that the police killing of Black people actually did go down in communities that had significant Black Lives Matter protests. We can take action to prioritize Black and Latinx businesses, which closed at more than twice the rate of white-owned businesses. We can listen to experts, such as those in the renowned Southern Poverty Law Center, who have been studying hate for decades now, and they are saying that what is needed isn't empathetic listening, it's cult deprogramming to get this out of our system. We may not be returning to normal, because normal will never return for most. However, we can be stepping into transformation. And we need to have conversations about what we wish to be different as a result, how we wish to balance our individual desires with our community commitments, which have sustained us and will again in other hard times, which will come again. We need to think about where we spend our money, where we spend our energy, where we spend our time, and how many times we fly in a year and how many miles we drive, how we might engage more fully with our democratic processes, which we now know are very fragile and temporal unless we guard them, and how we want to rethink the statements of belief that bind us together as Unitarian Universalists, as the Article 2 Commission is asking us to do, how we want to grow in our knowing so we can simply be more welcoming to the stranger who shows up tired and battered by the world at our doors and wants just to be a part of us. The thing is, when we give up suffering, we can address the underlying pain. When we give up the denial, we can redirect our resources towards the future that is actually before us. We will know not just with the fierceness of our intellect, but with the depth of our hearts and the wisdom of our bodies. With our living tradition, we are creatures that are trained to adapt and to change, and we can change, we can learn, and we can step into what we need to know. So let's stop trying not to know what we can't unknow and get on with the knowing, the connecting, the growing, and the welcoming. As the songwriter Carrie Newcomer says, we can do this hard thing. So may we be the ones to make it so. Thank you for allowing me to be with you today.
Wow, that was a good sermon. And now we will enjoy a hymn together. You may rise in body or spirit as we sing or hum, if you're in the room with us, Building a New Way, number 1017 in our teal hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit to sing. Hum. Please hum and hear, hum.
As always, feel free to join us for social hour on Zoom or in the social hall after this morning's postlude. And when you arrive, you'll be assigned to a randomized small group either way. Now please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.
As we go our ways now into the unknown and the unknowable, let us be reminded that we are not alone. We are held in a community of care, of justice, of challenge, of love. Go in love and be love in the world. And enjoy this postlude.